Video games are supposed to be an escape, and most of them are, but sometimes there's something about a video game that not only doesn't offer you the escape that you paid for, it also just pisses you off. What is up, everybody? Non-AI Jimmy today. I let AI Jimmy have the day off today. We're going to be talking about 20 games that pissed off the entire gaming world for one reason or another. So you let me know in the comments which of these games pissed you off the most. How mad did you get? Drop a like on the video, and let's get the obvious one out of the way. Let's all get pissed off together. At number 20, Diablo Immortal. Who remembers this beauty? Diablo is one of the most beloved action RPG franchises in gaming history, even if there hasn't been a universally liked entry in the franchise in over 20 years. Blizzard has been banking on the success of Diablo 2 for a really, really long time now, and I know fans are trying to hold out for a new entry. They decided they would do a great idea to announce Diablo Immortal, a mobile-only game filled with predatory microtransactions. The announcement at BlizzCon got them booed off stage. Not off stage, but they got booed like crazy, which led to Blizzard executives up on stage to make the now infamous demeaning comments towards their fans. When Diablo Immortal finally came out, it was exactly what we thought it was. A very crappy, very low effort, very predatory mobile game with a Diablo paint job, and this really should have been a lesson to the AAA industry to not insult their fan base, but as you know, that's not really a lesson that anyone in the AAA industry actually learned or wanted to hear. Guys, do me a favor. I read every single comment on every single video, so chime in on your thoughts on these video games. Which ones pissed you off the most? And do me a favor also, double favor day. Drop a like and subscribe. We are trying to get to 3 million subscribers in 2026. At number 19, Payday 3. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Payday 2 was a massive success. Still one of the most popular co-op shooters on the market right now. So obviously, Payday 3 had a lot of hype surrounding it. When it finally dropped, the entire gaming world was in an uproar because, put simply, it was a massive waste of time and money. Your time and money. For starters, the game didn't even work for about a week or two after launch because the servers were in such a horrible state and you couldn't play it offline for some reason. So while the servers were busted, the game was literally unplayable. But even once the server issues were ironed out, the game itself wasn't fun. Payday 2 had way more content. It was also weirdly more detailed with its gameplay. So most of the community, they just went back to Payday 2 while Payday 3 was left to sit and rot in the loser's chair. Even to this day, if you look at Steam charts, Payday 2 is doing excellent. Payday 3, it's a barren wasteland. Should have been a lesson again to all AAA developers on how not to launch your long-awaited sequel, as I'm sure all you know, the AAA industry doesn't pay attention or care to things like this. At number 18, Star Wars Battlefront 2 2017. The game that was so controversial, it actually led to legislation in several countries. Battlefront 2 2017 is now one of the best Star Wars games ever made, and the PC version is actually going through a huge resurgence as we speak because of some surprise content and balancing updates that dropped earlier this month. But back when Battlefront 2 first came out, it was the entire world's punching bag, and rightfully so. To keep things short and sweet here, the entire game's progression system was tied to RNG loot boxes that would have various skill cards and character upgrades in them, meaning this full-price game, it relied on a theoretically infinite number of RNG microtransactions in order for you to actually see all the content that you already paid for. On top of that, the system also meant the multiplayer was blatantly pay to win because you could drop $100 on loot boxes, get a bunch of stat upgrades for free while everyone else was grinding the game like normal, only getting upgrades about at the 10th of the speed as a paying player. Battlefront 2 ended up driving several world governments to introduce new legislation regarding in-game purchases and RNG-based microtransactions. It eventually led to EA and DICE completely reworking the multiplayer into something people wanted. It's kind of sad, because like I said, the game is fantastic today. If this game had launched in 2017 with the current set of mechanics, it could have been one of the biggest multiplayer shooters of all time. But instead, they got greedy, sitting on this list today and constantly fighting a losing battle with its own legacy. At number 17 today, Dance Dance Revolution Solo. I'm not kidding here. A DDR game actually got in a lot of trouble back in the early 2000s. Now, as you probably know, there's a million different versions of Dance Dance Revolution, all of which have their own set of songs, and each of the songs have their own unique background videos and animations to match the vibe of the music. But DDR Solo, the version released in the year 2000, actually came under fire because despite being a family-friendly game, some of the background videos were extremely not kid-friendly. They featured images of, we'll just say nurses, alcohol, drugs. I mean, the machines had to be recalled and replaced with edited versions for those songs. So you probably won't be able to play any of those DDR machines now anyway, especially since this was before the era of YouTube. But now that you know, even a family-friendly franchise like DDR can find itself in the hot seat. At number 16, Batman Arkham Knight, specifically the PC version. It's one of the most infamously bad ports in gaming history. It's all for a game that everyone was looking forward to. Arkham Knight was this big dramatic conclusion to the Rocksteady Batman trilogy, and it was shaping up to be one of the biggest and most detailed superhero games of all time. But when the game dropped, PC players were left in the dust because their version of the game, it didn't work. Like, it didn't work at all. Even if you had a NASA computer, you were going to be constantly freezing, crashing, and stuttering, and the backlash was so massive that Warner Brothers had to pull the PC version from sale. They pulled it from the shelves while they figured out what the heck was underneath the hood. Arkham Knight was eventually re-released on Steam. Now, absolutely amazing PC port, which is ironic, but during the launch window, this was one of the most controversial game releases of all time because even though there had been some janky PC ports before, nothing had been quite this bad, while also being this high profile. It's Batman! Arkham Knight became the poster child for bad PC ports to this day. No developer wants to be the one that releases the next Arkham Knight. At number 15 today, The Guy Game. This, I guess the safest way to say it, was a really trashy game from 2004. You were just playing a bunch of random trivia games with rewards being videos of real-world girls in bikinis. That was probably enough to make it controversial, but for the reason why the game caused such a stink, I mean, also the reason why you can't find it sold anymore, is because one of the real-world videos featured a girl who not only didn't know she was going to be in the game after she filmed, she wasn't 18. So here we had an M-rated game where the whole objective was to see scantily clad young women, and one of the young women was too young. On top of that, she didn't even know she was in the game. The game was recalled and discontinued so the publisher could avoid getting into legal trouble for distributing illegal content. Several gaming sites like Twitch will ban you if you try to stream this game to this day. At number 14, Postal 3. You may have expected me to put Postal 2 on the list. I considered it, but ultimately, Postal 2 did exactly what it set out to do. Postal 3, on the other hand, was such a hot mess and such an angering experience for fans of the franchise that the publisher ended up pulling it off their own storefront. I mean, you guys probably know the Postal series, right? Over-the-top life sim, graphic violence, really crazy scenarios for you to get yourself into. Postal 2 is one of the best examples of a so bad it's good video game. So when it came time for the official sequel in the form of Postal 3, the developer seemingly tried to channel that so bad it's good vibe into a new game, which you can't do. That's not how it works. It's special magic. But the thing about, that's it. I mean, you can't make them on purpose. Postal 3 ended up being a complete mess for a million different reasons. Not only was it just a poorly designed game, but development had been outsourced to a different company, and that company actually shut down almost immediately after releasing the game, which meant a massive list of bugs, it went unfixed. So the game was buggy, not very fun, very obviously trying to be Postal 2, but even more self-aware, and that just made it really cringeworthy and stupid. It got to the point that the franchise's publisher removed it from sale. They stated the previous Postal games were far superior products for less money. And then they apologized for outsourcing the development. The Postal franchise has since gone back to the original series developer running with scissors. And there have actually been a couple good Postal games since Postal 3, but it's been quite a while since I saw a franchise game get such a bad reception that the original developer just deletes it from existence out of embarrassment. Something like that takes a lot of pissed off gamers. At number 13, Fallout 76. Now, the concept of Fallout 76 was really cool. People were hoping for a full-fledged single-player Fallout game at the time that it was revealed, and there was a bit of disappointment. The game that we got, well, what we were promised, right, versus what we got. Massive scale online Fallout game where you could interact with other players, discover things to do, while also getting into battles for your survival with friends. An online multiplayer version of Fallout could have been epic. And from everything I heard, the game is actually pretty good now, but upon release, this was one of the most hated games ever because of the gigantic list of problems that Bethesda seemingly did not care enough to tell us about before they took your money. First of all, the game barely worked on launch day. Shocker. It was horribly optimized and crashed frequently, making it a difficult experience for anything. Second of all, there was almost nothing to do in the game. Even if you were lucky enough to play for more than 20 minutes without a crash, it also didn't help that Bethesda seemingly had no interest in making things right with their community because they were sending out these, I would just call them snarky customer support emails to people asking about refunds or bug fixes. Eventually, things got patched up. But not only was Fallout 76 a massive disappointment, it was also a PR nightmare for Bethesda because there was no way they didn't know about the technical problems leading up to release, and yet they sent it on its way. And they set it free. They didn't tell anybody. Even worse than all that, they tried to get away with not fixing them for a long time. What are we doing? At number 12. Now, if Cyberpunk 2077 is at number 12, you can imagine how this list is going to go. Expectations through the roof. First major release for CD Projekt Red since they made gaming history with The Witcher 3, and they were promising us an experience that was even deeper and even more dynamic, right? And on paper, Cyberpunk 2077 was really amazing RPG. Day one, though, rolls around. It didn't work. It didn't work at all. The game had to be pulled from sale, which was unheard at the time for a game of that stature. And CD Projekt Red had to spend the next 3 years issuing hundreds of patches and content updates in order to eventually make the game that they initially promised you. If you boot up Cyberpunk right now, it's a really good action RPG. If you booted it up during the launch week, you would have been lucky to get 30 minutes of gameplay under your belt before you encountered a game-breaking bug or crash. And when the games that are this big and get this much marketing and release this broken, people get pissed off. I mean, obviously, the publisher knew the game was broken. Obviously, CD Projekt Red knew the game wasn't ready to go out, and yet they sent it on its way. Maybe people wouldn't complain, right? Yeah. At number 11, Mario Kart World. Probably weird to put a Mario Kart game on this list, but Mario Kart World got in a lot of trouble when it was revealed in 2025. Then it caused even more trouble when it was released. The game itself, it's okay. It's fine. It's more or less what you'd expect from a Mario Kart game, but the reason it gets a spot today is simply because of the insane backlash that Nintendo got for the price tag. Mario Kart was priced at a ridiculous $80 for a digital copy and $90 for a physical cartridge. That's stupid. I'm not saying Mario Kart World is a bad game. It is not worth $90. And this set a very bad precedent for the rest of the industry because we all know the gaming industry is always looking for excuses to charge more money for things. And if Nintendo's charging $90 for Mario Kart, who's to say Rockstar can't charge $100 or more for GTA 6? Now we arrive at the top 10. This is where it gets really good, my friends. Stick with me. No Man's Sky. The game's great now. Amazing. But not when it was released. It was one of the most controversial entertainment releases ever because it was just broken promise after broken promise and blatantly false advertising. They lied. We were promised a game that spanned galaxies and had so much stuff to do. What we got was a repetitive, ugly mess of a game that didn't have any of the promised features. No online interactions, no warring factions, none of it. Did I mention that there was also a ton of technical problems on day one? The optimization was horrible. There was constant crashing. No Man's Sky eventually patched itself into the experience we were promised, so it's at number 10 today instead of much, much higher. But if you're looking for a game that initially started the trend of releasing broken games and fixing them later, I think No Man's Sky is ground zero for that. I really do. At number 9, Mass Effect. Now, Mass Effect wasn't even that bad in terms of the kind of content that it had in the game, and as far as M-rated RPGs go, it was pretty tame. But the reason it was so controversial was because of the simple fact that a handful of news outlets decided to run hit pieces on the scenes featured in the game, resulting in Mass Effect becoming the poster child for ultra just sensualized games, despite the fact there was barely any of that content in the game to begin with. Fox News infamously ran a segment called the S-Box, where they basically just called Mass Effect a P game and forced Jeff Keighley to come on and defend it. Basically, Mass Effect was widely hated by non-gamers due to a small number of newscasters telling them it was the worst thing ever, even though there was no actual basis to what they were saying. But since we're talking about Mass Effect, segue into number 8, Mass Effect 3. Now, Mass Effect 1 pissed off the non-gamers who watched too much cable news. Mass Effect 3 pissed off the actual gamers who invested in the franchise. And even though all 3 Mass Effect games told a really well-crafted story with a lot of player agency and impact on the direction of the plot, something happened behind the scenes during development of Mass Effect 3. Basically made it useless. Mass Effect 3's final couple hours ended up reducing all your choices throughout the trilogy to a small handful of possible endings. And it only took a few hours of online cross-referencing for the community to actually realize that BioWare had completely slapped them in the face. Put simply, Mass Effect 3's original ending completely trashed all your decisions up to that point, and even though BioWare eventually released a DLC that kind of fixed things, the damage was done. Mass Effect 3's ending was one of the most controversial things in gaming history because of how much it crapped on the literal hundreds of hours worth of work you put into the story on the other games. A lot of people see this as an exact moment where BioWare lost their way, and to those people's credit, BioWare hasn't actually put out a good game before this ending was released. At number 7, The Last of Us Part 2. The first Last of Us game, widely praised in the gaming community, gaming history. Second one, not so much. Now, without getting too far into the crap storm that the game caused, The Last of Us Part 2 was one of the most anticipated games ever. But when it finally came out, fans were split right down the middle on whether or not it was good. Now, some people loved it for subverting expectations. Other people saw it as a massive slap in the face towards people who liked the first game. I think it's pretty undeniable that some of the characters from the first game weren't exactly treated with respect in the sequel. Then again, it's a video game, it's a story, right? The Last of Us Part 2, it's a beautiful game. Top-notch stealth action gameplay, but the story was very controversial because of how much it needed to actually kind of just shovel on the beloved characters of the first game. Whether or not you're okay with that, it's up to you. But there's no denying how controversial it was when it dropped in 2020. At number 6 today, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. So the anger surrounding Last of Us 2 may have been a little divisive, but the anger surrounding the remaster, much more universal. Frankly, this game shouldn't exist. Everybody knows it. I know it. You know it. Remaster was released a few years after the original game. It was literally pointless because a few years before the remaster version came out, Sony and Naughty Dog released a huge PS5 patch for the original game. If you put Last of Us 2 Vanilla and Last of Us 2 Remastered side by side, it's legitimately hard to see which version is which. And yet Sony tried to charge $50 for the new version. Also didn't help matters that the game came out at a time when people were really frustrated with Sony for their lack of first-party games. They can't release a new God of War game, but they could release a pointless, overpriced remaster of Last of Us 2. Gamers were pissed off. Now we arrive at the top 5. Are you angry yet? Duke Nukem Forever. I don't even know if I have to explain this, but for you younger ones here, I will. Duke Nukem Forever was in the works for over a decade. The story behind its development, it's long, it's fascinating, ultimately really disappointing because it ended up being all for nothing. The long-awaited sequel to the revolutionary Duke Nukem 3D was supposed to be this amazing experience. It will blow us away and possibly transform the FPS genre again like its predecessor did. The end result? Something that looked and played like it had been slapped together in a matter of weeks as opposed to carefully crafted over 10 plus years. The decade-long wait resulted in this buggy, ugly, repetitive, unfun, offensive mess that many called one of the worst games of all time. Now, if you play Duke Nukem Forever now, I don't think you'll find it to be that bad, but it's not good. Certainly not one of the worst games ever made, but the decade-long wait, it set people's expectations through the roof, and rightfully so. We were promised something amazing. What we got, I would say, was a C- at best. At number 4, GTA San Andreas. Grand Theft Auto has been controversial from the start. That's what they do. But things hit critical mass during the San Andreas era. During development of San Andreas, Rockstar was planning on putting on a full-on mini-game into one of the dating side quests. Basically, you would date a girl, you would bring her home, and you could participate in the activities. Obviously, this was seen as being a way too graphic for a video game, even an M-rated game, so they decided to block off the minigame from the final version of the game since there wasn't enough time to fully cut it out. But shortly after the release of the game, guess what? The internet knows. People figured out how the minigame was still in the game files. Somebody made a mod that re-enabled the game. Eventually, the ESRB and various parent groups learned about it, and that's when the crap storm started. The ESRB threatened to give the game an adults-only rating, forcing Rockstar to recall all the discs and patch it for re-release, even by GTA standards. The now infamous Hot Coffee mod is seen as the most controversial aspect of the entire franchise, but somehow, that wasn't even the biggest controversy that Rockstar found themselves in during the 2000s. Segue at number 3, Bully. Bully. It was released a few years after San Andreas and was comparatively low-key. Instead of being a criminal running around a dangerous city, you're just a middle schooler trying to stand up to a group of bullies terrorizing the campus of a boarding school. But since the game was made by Rockstar, and the media already hated them for all their shenanigans they pulled in the GTA games a few years prior, well, a bunch of news outlets decided to call this game a bullying simulator. They said the whole point of the game was to beat up other students and assault children, which was a lie. It was the exact opposite of the truth. But since this was the mid-2000s and gaming wasn't super mainstream, most of the non-gaming world decided to run with the story, and Bully was ripped apart by the news. Parents across the United States for weeks. It's actually funny to think about how much the world hated this game because it's probably the least offensive game Rockstar has ever released. But that didn't matter back then. The news channels were slandering it, and as far as they were concerned, Bully was the most offensive and degenerate game ever made. At number 2, Rockstar. One more. Manhunt 2. This time the outrage was actually justified. The first Manhunt game was a super violent stealth action game that was actually pretty decent as far as early 2000s stealth actions go. The sequel, Manhunt 2, they cranked up the violence and they sold itself on the shock factor, but this time around there was a Wii port. You heard me right. A Nintendo Wii port, which got a lot of people over at Rockstar in trouble. Instead of just clicking a button to start brutal execution animations, the Wii version rehired you to actually do the executions with motion controls, which a lot of people saw as a step too far. Rockstar was forced to edit the game, tone down the motion controls in order to keep it from getting that AO rating from the ESRB, but even after the edits, the sheer amount of gore and torture was more than enough to make it one of the most controversial games of all time. I don't have a problem with a bloody, violent video game, but sometimes you have to ask yourself where the line is. And at number 1 today, the game that I feel pissed off the most gamers is Aliens Colonial Marines. One of the most infamous examples of false advertising and lying in a video game. Aliens Colonial Marines was initially revealed with this amazing gameplay tech demo that showed off awesome graphics, incredible atmosphere, absolutely horrifying alien interactions. The aliens were smart. They used sophisticated tactics, they moved with purpose, and the whole thing looked like it was going to be one of the best horror FPS experiences we ever got. But then a bunch of nonsense happened behind the scenes, and the end result was one of the worst FPS games of the decade. Ugly graphics, unfinished mechanics, broken AI. Whole thing could have been finished in less than 8 hours. You can look up the exact fiascos that led to the game being such a mess, but the game launching the way it did resulted in several lawsuits because the gameplay that was used to promote the game was scrapped, and we weren't told that. The version of the game we saw in the initial demo presentation had to be totally reworked into something much worse, and yet Sega and Gearbox, they were still using the initial version to promote the unfinished product. Or the finished product. That's a lot of shady stuff going on behind the scenes. But yeah, I think it's more deserving of the number 1 spot. Everyone was pissed off about this game. Even if you didn't care about the Aliens franchise, nobody likes being lied to. And the fact that nobody was fired over this still amazes me. And there you have it, my friends. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. I love this community. I read every single comment on every single video. Let me know a game that pissed you off that I didn't show some love or non-love, and I'll see you soon.